Hi, everyone. I'm Stan Mallow. Welcome to Paranormal Yacker. My guest on today's show, who I'll be yakking with, is author Kevin Killen. I'll be discussing with him his book, Ghosts and Me. Kevin Killen, welcome to Paranormal Yacker. Now, Kevin, your book explores numerous paranormal experiences you've had and ranges from phantom footsteps to shadow people. Now, I know you first encountered a ghost at a very young age. How old were you when that happened? Where were you? And what were the circumstances surrounding that encounter?
Sure. I was actually about 5 years old, and I was living in Evanston, Illinois, which is right outside of Chicago. At the time, my father was a journalist, and we lived in a really old, one of those turn of the century, really old houses that you'd think would be haunted. So he took my older brothers to a basketball game. I think he was covering out in St. Louis, Missouri, and it was just me and my mother. And we were downstairs eating dinner, and I distinctly heard footsteps upstairs. And I turned to my mom and I said, "Who's that?" And she said, "That's my little boy." And that confused me because I was the only little boy in the house that I knew of. So she told me later that she said that because she was afraid somebody had broken in and didn't want me to get scared. Um, so that was my first experience of that. But I just think as I tell this story and relate it to people, I can still hear the footsteps. And I can go back to that time, and it's still vivid in my mind of my first encounter.
How did you react to that encounter? You were such a young person at that time. Did you share it with anyone, be it friends or family members? And if you did, were you believed?
At the time, I don't believe I did. I may have said something to my brothers, and they just kind of laughed and blew me off because I was the baby of the family, and they were most of them were pretty much, older than I was, so they were just kind of like, "Ah, stupid little kid," that kind of thing. Um, Friends, I didn't really tell until later on when I started actually getting into the paranormal in high school. And then when I was actually having incidents with footsteps in my home in Falls Church, Virginia, growing up. So, yeah, I kind of kept it to myself for a long time.
Amongst your paranormal experiences were, as I previously mentioned, hearing phantom footsteps, encountering shadow people. Could you elaborate on those experiences?
Sure. I was in Falls Church, Virginia, is where I grew up. I consider myself a Virginian, even though I was born in the Philippines and kind of bopped all over. But I spent the majority of my formative years in Virginia, and I'm actually located in Virginia now. So basically, we had it wasn't a very old house, it was maybe 45 years old, but it had wooden floors, and I was in the master bedroom, and I would hear footsteps nearly every night. Um, and what that it was like it was somebody would walk up to my bed and walk around and walk away from it, and this continued almost nightly. So I tell my mother, my mother would kind of laugh it off, but I think my mother knew more than she let on, and she never talked about it much. But she later relayed that while she didn't think the house was haunted, she did have some weird noise experiences later on in the home. So as I got older and got into high school, I got really into a lot of the paranormal books and started reading a lot of stuff. And one of the books that I read was about a bird. I believe he was a bird watcher, and I want to say Sweden. His name was Rodiv or Rodive, and he wrote a book where he actually was in the forest collecting bird sounds, and he actually picked up voices, and he couldn't understand that because he was like, "There's nobody around me." So he kind of was like an early EVPer without even knowing it. So I read his book, and I said, "Hey, that's kind of cool. Let's go ahead and try that." And for some of the younger audience members, back in the day when I was in school, we had these things called tape recorders, and I had one of those. I had one of those big boom boxes that had detachable speakers, and they had two tapes. You could dub and certain things like that. So I basically found myself alone one day and said, "You know what? I'm going to see if I can get something." So I went ahead and hit play and record, and asked if there was anybody here to show me. And went ahead and went to a friend's house, and for about 45 minutes to an hour or whatever it was, and came back and replayed the tape, and went ahead and hit play, and got nothing, mostly white noise until about the very end of the tape where it was actually something drumming on top of the radio, and I was like, what's this? There's nobody in this house. And then all of a sudden, at the very end, I got this very guttural, low voice that I have shown you, ha ha. And of course, that scared the hell out of me, and I about ran out of the house because but it showed me, and it actually it responded to my question, and from there, that really got me into the realm of the paranormal because I really wanted to know what that was.
While in school, you lived in a haunted house. Did you know it was haunted prior to moving in? Or what were the ghosts or ghosts in the house like? What was your interaction with them?
No, actually, I did not. I'd been living in another house with my roommate, who I moved to that house with, and we were at the end of our lease, and we decided we really didn't want this house anymore. So we were kind of looking for another place to stay, and he mentioned that he had a friend of his that had a house not too far from where we were now, close to school, and he said, hey, they're renting it for this. He said, hey, you want to come with me, man? There's an extra bedroom. I said, okay, sure, why not? So at the time, I had no idea, but found out very quickly that there was some things going on that we weren't necessarily prepared for. I would find myself, he was a bartender, and he would work till 3, 4, 5 in the morning, which left me in the house by myself a lot of the time. So I would hear footsteps. I would hear the door open and close in the bathroom. I would hear the door going to the outside open. Immediately think, okay, well, he must be home, so let me go see what's up. The door would open, and then we'll go to the bathroom. The bathroom door would close, and I think, okay, well, he came in, went to the bathroom. Well, then, like an hour later, the bathroom door is still closed. So I'd go and knock on the door and check if he was okay. Wasn't there. So I said, okay, that's interesting. So then you question at that time, and you're like, geez, did I really hear all this stuff? And things like that, like the cupboards would
But maybe a poltergeist is around now. Who knows? They're making themselves known to you. So if you could answer that, or
Yeah, that actually I was going to tell you, Stan, that usually does happen when I do these
oh,
interviews.
okay,
Audio and video do kind of mess up, so I do tell people it is me, so it probably is. Just kind of bear with me. They like to watch and interact in their own way.
sure. That's good. Now, at one time you dated a witch. What was that relationship like? How did it differ from, say, dating a nurse or a lawyer? Did you ever partake in any rituals or ceremonies with her?
Yeah, it was really interesting, and I was actually glad that I did because she actually taught me a lot of things about New Age things and paranormal things, and I think she
Okay, again, we just lost you again. I think your friend, I want your friends to know I like them. I'm with you. Please let us have this. Thank you. Okay, so if you just want to take that part of it, you said it was interesting and up to the part where she taught you a lot about New Age.
Sure. So yeah, it was really interesting. Like I said, I think she opened me up a little bit. She taught me a lot of things about the craft and how things work, and basically to kind of hone my skills that I didn't even know I had at the time. But then actually, I had all these questions about why this happened, why that happened, and she actually did uh, teach me a lot as far as this is why this is happening, this is why that's happening. And I did partake in some ritualistic things later on, towards the end of our relationship when she actually started a coven. So
Oh,
I did partake in that a little bit. But yeah, it was really interesting. And like I said, we're really good friends still.
oh, that's great. Now, EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, capturing the voice of departed spirit, is something I find fascinating. You were successful at doing that. Previously, you mentioned something about doing it with your tape recorder. Uh, now, how did that come about? Were you ever able, and how were you able to capture it? Were there instances when you were able to capture it, and how did you go about doing that?
Are you referring to the first time where I just went when I talked to my first one, or did you? I had a subsequent
The
one.
subsequent one would be good. Yeah.
Okay, the subsequent one. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was actually with the same girl. We had moved back to Pennsylvania from Virginia, and we lived in an old mill house. I believe it was. It was an old mining house, actually, maybe. So, we'd heard some things and things had gone on, and I knew the place was old. So I found myself alone one day, and I said, you know what? I'm going to put a recorder, just a standard handheld recorder, it was a little Panasonic.
Hmm.
I said, I'm going to take it down to the basement and see what I can get, because I think, maybe there might be something down there. So I went ahead and did another EVP session. Didn't say anything this time, just let the recorder run. Got back, took it upstairs, listened to it, and I heard some very interesting things. There was a lot of banging noise and we had boards down there. I don't know where they were from. I guess the landlord had them in there for something. And they were, it sounded like somebody was breaking stuff up and throwing them around the basement. And I knew nobody was down there. We had animals, but they certainly wouldn't go downstairs or do that. This was a daytime EVP. That's why one thing I tell people is that people seem to think you can only get this stuff at night. Well, that's not true. They're everywhere at any time. So, and that's proof for me that, you can get this any time, because I recorded this at about 11 o'clock in the morning on a weekday. I went downstairs and looked around. There was nothing out of place. There was nothing down there that would have made these noises. And I went outside thinking maybe one of the neighbors. There was nothing there. I was totally alone. So it was just one of those other head scratchers.
Wow. Now, in your book, you write about a number of paranormal experiences in Virginia. This includes a haunted battlefield, a haunted theater, and haunted homes. Could you elaborate a bit on those experiences?
Sure, absolutely. Those experiences all happened in the same vicinity. I was living in Winchester, Virginia, which for any history buffs or geography buffs, that's the Shenandoah Valley, and there was a lot of Civil War history took place out there. As a matter of fact, Winchester, I believe, changed hands between the North and the South about 75 times during the war. And they actually have a museum out there that is Stonewall Jackson's headquarters. Because basically, they used to commandeer houses when they, come into an area, and generals would set up and things like that. So we lived in a duplex there, and we lived near Fort Collier battlefield. Um, and one night we were, me and Cheryl were out there, and we were basically just hanging out on a summer night, and we were hearing Dixie play. It was like 4 in the morning. We're like, Dixie playing on a flute. And I said, well, who's playing Dixie at 4 in the morning? That's crazy. Nobody would do that. So then the next day I went around and inquired. So I was a journalist at the time, so I knew a lot of people in the area. And when I said, hey, do you think anybody played Dixie at 4 in the morning? Was there any crazy reenactments that go on around here at that time? And everyone was like, no, there was nobody doing that. So I was like, okay, that's really interesting because, obviously Dixie being the, song of the South, so essentially. And a few weeks later in the same place, we were outside. I used to be a smoker, and we were out there smoking on the patio, and we heard distinctive booms as if like a cannon was going off. And we were like, what is this? This is crazy. So we thought, okay, maybe I'm hearing things, but we both heard it distinctly. It was just as if a cannon would go off during a reenactment or anything you hear in the army or in the military. So again, I was, went and inquired, and of course nothing was going on. And I was like, geez, what is this? I have no idea. But then, after doing some research and everything and finding out things about the Civil War and learning that we had lived near a battlefield, and I didn't even know that I lived near Fort Collier till much later after we moved. So that's where that happened. And it was just very bizarre that these things happen 3, 4 in the morning. And again, if you study the paranormal, you understand that that's one of the things that is supposedly happening is they play over and over, and that's kind of their thing. And I think that's what happened there. Is it was just their reenactment of that battle, and we actually got to capture it.
What about the theater? Was it a theater with an old theater, a new theater, or historical significance?
Yes, it was a very old theater. Um, excuse me. We actually had a restaurant or an inn. I'm sorry, an inn attached to it. It was called the Wayside Theater and Inn, and it dated back to the 1700s. So the theater and the inn have been both around since that time, not in use as that particular thing, but yeah, it was. It had been around for a very, very long time, and it had its own resident spirit George that would mess with people, one of the seats would go down by itself during play rehearsals, and they always say, "Oh, that's George." And if you ever go there, it's just a very old, creepy kind of thing. You feel there's just an energy in the building, and like I said, it's great for history buffs or theater buffs. It's just a beautiful, beautiful old place. But it was interesting to go there and talk with the theater director and actually pick up some things.
That's good. 'Cause I love the energy in old theaters. They definitely don't want to leave that place when they're there. Now, in your work, you counsel people who are recovering from drug and alcohol addictions. In your workplace, you and your coworkers have experienced paranormal activity. Why do you think that is? Is it the physical building itself, the energy of the recovering addicts, or something else?
I'm sorry, Stan. The first couple sentence I heard there was blank. I didn't get any of
Okay,
that.
I'll repeat it then. That's a good thing of us editing. Could you hear me now?
Yes.
Good, okay. And if you can't, just let me know. Okay. In your work, you counsel people who are recovering from drug and alcohol addictions. In your workplace, you and your coworkers have experienced paranormal activity. Why do you think that is? Is it the physical building itself, the energy of the recovering addicts, or something else?
I think it's a combination of both. The place where it's a pretty old building, and it's built on swampland, and I jokingly call it Wild Kingdom because we've had all sorts of that. You almost any animal short of a bear, and I probably shouldn't say this because next thing I know, next time I go to work, we'll have a bear show up.
Mhm.
But we've had all sorts of animals. As a matter of fact, one night a few years ago, I actually came and I work nights, and one of the things I do is I check their bed, so I have to come down a hallway to go back to the staff office. There was at least a 7, 8 foot black snake blocking me right in the middle of the hall. It went right across the hall. I couldn't even move until that thing moved, and it was about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. So that was that was really something. But I think it's a bit of everything. A lot of people have a lot of negativity when they go in there, and obviously their backstories, most of them are horrible, so they bring a lot of negative energy in with them. So I think that just has a tendency to build, like any other kind of energy, and it just kind of saturates the place is what it does now, and it's kind of like at times walking through pea soup. Walking through the community, it's been that thick with negative energy.
Now, it seems as though you are a magnet for attracting spirits. Why do you think they seem to attach themselves to you?
Well, I've been learning lately, or actually for the last couple of years, that I'm actually an empath. I have empathic ability, and I think that's one of the main reasons that I do have spirit attraction, is because of my abilities. I am becoming more open, as they say, or awoke, as they say. I'm actually finding myself more, and actually these things are actually getting more powerful. Uh, as I go along. And also, I think I attribute that to my Celtic background, being Irish American. I think that has a lot to do with it. And I actually mentioned that in the book, that I do believe that a lot of this, I have Irish German blood in me, and I think goes back to the old country. And I think that has a lot to do with.
How do you handle being an empath, especially dealing with people who have a lot of problems, within themselves? One of the things I find with a lot of people who are empaths is to try and distance themselves from people. They just absorb energy when it's around them. How do you handle that?
Well, that's actually a really good question, Stan. And I'll bring this up because I'm dealing with this now. One of my brothers died 2 weeks ago,
Well, condolences.
and thank you. And I've been named the executor to his estate because I'm the only one in the area. I wasn't very close with him. We were estranged for the last 5 years, but I was the closest one in the proximity to him. So I'm taking care of a lot of the the arrangements and things like that. Well, it's been a really rough 2 weeks, and I found myself a lot worn down because I'm doing this, I'm doing the interviews, I'm doing book things, I'm doing work things. Um, so I actually had a friend of mine from another show who's a psychic. I was telling him about what's going on, and she
Excuse me. I could you hear me?
yeah, you're cutting in and out pretty
Yeah,
bad.
well, you are too. Okay, again. Your
Okay.
spirit friends are really showing themselves over here. Is you stopped at the point?
Yeah.
Okay, I lost you at the point when you started about your psychic friend that you went to. What you're experiencing now. Then from there on.
Okay. Yeah. So she basically gave me some grounding techniques and some protection techniques to kind of wall myself off because I'm running down because again it's just I went to the funeral home the other day and it about knocked me over because I was just feeling all the energy in that place and so she gave me some grounding techniques. Honestly, it's really difficult for me to do that because I find myself getting bad headaches when I try to block a lot of this energy, and that's typical. So I'm just learning how to do some grounding techniques and things like that to try to stave that off. But it's not easy for me, honestly.
No, I know that. I believe that because I know people that I know who are empaths. Very, very difficult dealing with that, especially as things get close to you, like your brother. It's family member over there. It has to be draining. But it's good that your friend gave you rounding techniques. Good. Would you
Yeah,
want to
and
share
actually,
any of them?
sure. Yeah, before I do that, I just want to mention one thing. Again, as I said earlier, that I'm estranged from my brother, and when I was doing this in the process of moving his stuff, meeting people he knew, without knowing who I was, other than his brother, I had numerous people say, "Hey, he's still here. We feel him. His spirit's still here." And I was just like, "Wow, they don't even." And I was like, "I know he is. He's watching us," but they didn't know that before. And then I told them who I was and wrote the book and everything. And they were like, wow, I really believe in that stuff. And I said, that was amazing that you guys picked up on that because I knew that the minute I hit the door. So that was all, that was pretty interesting
Very
that I
much
had
so,
total
yes.
strangers coming up to me, saying that we can still feel him and he's going to be missed.
I'm glad you shared that because I think it's going to help a lot of people out there who wonder sometimes, does spirit live on? And the answer, of course, is yes, spirit lives on.
Yeah, they definitely do. And the one thing with most people that don't do that, and again, it took me a long time to learn, and I'm still learning. Again, I really know nothing, honestly. I'm still learning. I'm still trying to figure this all out. But one thing I do know now is that when the world gives you signs, listen, because uh, there are definite signs here that I knew he was here because there was things only to him that showed up, and I knew he was here. So it was just, and it happened now a lot with a lot going on. A lot of people don't do that, but it's something that you have to learn to do. And it took me a long time to understand that. As a matter of fact, listen to your gut is such a good thing because it's true. And I've actually lost money not listening to my gut when the numbers hit the lottery, and this is a true story. So I've learned to say, oh, if I say something like, hey, that might make a good lottery number, I'll go play that lottery number because I didn't do that before and it hit the next day. So I learned my lesson.
Or at least you learn, so that's good. And now, what advice would you give to anyone who had an encounter with a ghost and is not sure how to handle it? Should they keep it to themselves to avoid being ridiculed? Should they share it with someone else, or what? What's your advice to them?
I would, I think it's like any other therapy. And this is something that we all struggle with, myself included, before I even wrote this book. And even while I was writing this book and before it got published, I was struggling with that. Like people are going to come out and they think you're nuts. And that's okay because we all are a little bit. I mean, hey, I've got a couple degrees and I'm this and that. I'm. You can't be normal and do what I do. Who works overnights? What normal person works nights, right? But no, seriously, if they can find somebody that they can trust to speak with, definitely. Because again, I think it's very therapeutic and cathartic for most people. Because a lot of people do not know how to handle this, and myself included, and it's taken me all this time. And again, if they can't find anybody, Before we wrap up, I'll give them that. Before we go, I'll give you my direct email, which I love to talk to people about anything, but especially the paranormal. And I do this for anything. It's actually my book. My email is my book. But yeah, feel free to hit me up and talk to me, because I can maybe try to guide people through it, or at least relate their experience.
Got to tell you, what you just said is a perfect segue to what I wanted to ask you now. Kevin, should any of our viewers want to order your book, Ghost and Me, how do they go about doing that? And you said you also wanted to give out your email. You want to hear from them? Sure. Why not do it?
Yes. Great. You can order on Amazon.com. You can go to ozarkmountain.com. That's my publishing company. You can go to barnesandnoble.com, walmart.com, pretty much any .com that sells books, I do believe does have it. Barnes and Noble, I believe, and Walmart used to have them on the shelf. I guess in some places they're allowed in, I guess, but those are the best places, is my website and Amazon to get the book. And I get that they have it both in e version and in paperback.
And you also said you wanted to give out your email address?
Yes, let me give out my email address and my Instagram account.
Sure.
They can hit me up either way.
Sure.
My email is KKILLEN, B as in boy, T as in Tom, KKillenBT @gmail.com. And they can also hit me up at Irish, IRISH, Kev, KEV, 7147.
Perfect. Kevin, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yacker. I look forward to interview you again when you complete your next book, because I know you're working on one. Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. So you don't miss any upcoming shows, be sure to subscribe to Paranormal Yacker, my free YouTube channel. I would love for you to join me on the 1st and 15th of every month, when you'll find me yakking with a different, exciting guest. I hope you subscribe today. Thanks.